Welcome to The Red Story. If you like it, like and subscribe to the channel. It's very inspiring. My ex-wife, Sarah, 48F, left me 47M a year and a half ago for a guy named Mark who was married to her high school best friend. We had been married for 20 years and had what I thought were 2 children together. Recently, I found out that my 6-year-old daughter isn't biologically mine. She's Mark's. Sarah knew this from the start and kept it from me. My name is on the birth certificate, and I intend to fight for custody because, despite everything, she is my daughter. Discovering this affair was like a kick in the teeth. When I confronted Sarah, asking if it was him or me, she coldly said it was him because he could get it right back up after sex. That was the only reason, sex. She completely disregarded the fact that I worked 2 jobs to support her through school and continued to do so she could stay home and raise our kids while she cheated on me. I gave up pursuing my dreams and music career for her so she could pursue hers and have a family. They have always been the #1 priority in my life. Sarah has always been a cold woman, struggling with bipolar disorder, which made life challenging. Her outbursts and physical and emotional abuse were soul-crushing, but I endured it because I believed she couldn't help it. Turns out that wasn't entirely true. She admitted to friends that she often punched me because she felt like it or wasn't getting her way. My kids witnessed her striking and verbally abusing me several times. Each time, I took it without fighting back, hating that my kids had to see this. Toward the end, she became even more aggressive. Once, she was angry at me for not taking out the trash the moment I came home. She grabbed me by the neck and started squeezing while our son watched in horror. I told her our son would always remember this, and only then did she let me go. I should have left long ago, but I didn't want our kids to have a broken home. I held on to the hope that someday Sarah would go back to being the woman I fell in love with. Now I know that those days are dead and gone and have been for years. After everything came to light, Sarah sat down with her friend whose husband she was cheating with and told her point blank, "Yes, it's true, and no, I'm not sorry." Then she walked away. Sarah left, took the kids, and moved in with Mark into an apartment behind the one we shared. Even then, I held on to the hope that she would see the grass wasn't greener with him. He had cheated on his wife several times before Sarah, and she knew this. I waited for an entire year, hoping she would come back. She kept the apartment keys, and I assumed she was holding on to them because she knew she would eventually come home. But at the end of that year, they started their cruelty again. Mark would constantly drop by the bus stop as I was putting the kids on the bus for school and say, "I come to see my daughter off to school, not your daughter of mine." I told him, "Then why were you content for the past 5 years to let me raise her? Let her have my last name, let me be there at her birth and raise her as mine. Where were you? Why is my name on the certificate as her father instead of yours?" That almost earned me a punch to the face and a drunken visit from both of them later that night because Mark showed up to fight. Sarah then decided to make everything public, going on Facebook to brag about her new boyfriend. Our friends were shocked and reached out to me and his wife about it. I made sure to grab all the screenshots I could. She doesn't seem to care about the hole she's dug for herself with our upcoming divorce. Then again, why should she? I already got her with a paternity test. At the end of everything, I became self-destructive. I kept wondering what I could have done differently or better. Sarah blamed me for not being around for her, but if I wasn't working 2 jobs, how could we have survived? I didn't clean when I got home because I was too tired, and she would scream at me about the trash while our kids had color on the walls, tore down blinds, and put holes in the walls under her watch. But the trash not being taken out after working 16 hours was the problem. The worst part was that I wanted my family back so badly that I started believing it was my fault. It took a while to see the truth of it all. All that changed when my brother, who was determined to get me to play in his band, introduced me to the other members. I still declined to join the band, but I struck up a friendship with them, which led to me casually dating a woman named Emily 45F, who was introduced to me by the rhythm guitarist. I quickly fell in love with Emily, and it was a relief to be in a loving relationship with someone who wasn't constantly screaming or hitting me. During this time, Sarah still had the keys to our apartment and would occasionally let herself in to drop off stuff for the kids. The first time she let herself in while Emily was there did not go well. Sarah called me that night, demanding to know who Emily was and why she was in our apartment. I enjoyed telling Sarah that Emily was none of her business. Sarah had moved on, left me, and was living with someone else. In the last few months, Sarah has become erratic over my new relationship with Emily. She has even begun to stalk her. Sarah sent Emily a Facebook friend request and demanded that Emily accept it. When Emily refused, Sarah called me, screaming that I needed to tell Emily to accept it because she needed to see the kind of person Emily was as she was around our kids. Emily grabbed the phone from me and told Sarah that she did not need to add her as a friend. Anything involving communication about the kids could be done through Messenger or phone calls. Sarah was not and would not be a part of Emily's personal life. This didn't sit well with Sarah. Emily showed me a sudden burst of friend requests she received from people connected to Sarah. Then Sarah started letting herself into my apartment every weekend while I was at work to snoop around. One day, while I was on the phone with Emily, who was staying in my place, I heard Sarah walk in. Emily asked her if there was something she needed. Sarah claimed she wanted to check how much milk I had in the fridge for when the kids came over. Emily told her we had it handled, and Sarah left. When I got home, I demanded that Sarah return the apartment key since she wasn't living there anymore. She then took my son's keys and made copies for herself. When my lease was up, Emily asked me to move in with her so we could distance ourselves from Sarah. Sarah did everything she could to hinder this, including calling the police and claiming I was leaving with her belongings. When asked to identify what was hers, she couldn't name anything in my place that belonged to her. Now we get the kids every other weekend. My children told me that they were not allowed to talk about what they did with me because Sarah didn't want to hear it. That didn't last long, though. Now she pumps them for all the information she can get. It's clear she's jealous. We live on the beach and Emily is well off. When we have the kids, we take short walks to the boardwalk to ride rides, let them play on the beach, or visit the aquarium. If they return home with prizes, Sarah throws them away. Lately, Sarah's behavior has escalated. The last few times she dropped off the kids, I noticed she started dressing and looking very similar to Emily. She dyed her hair and cut it to match Emily's. Whatever we do with the kids, Sarah tries to do the same thing with them the following week. If we go to the beach, she takes them to the beach. If we go to the zoo, she takes them to the zoo. If she finds out what we had for dinner, she makes the same thing and demands the kids tell her whose food they liked more. Last week, my son asked to live with us because he said Sarah was crazy. You better believe I'm using all of this in court. Just when I didn't think things could get any crazier with her, the other night, she started texting me news. What the hell? Emily was sitting next to me when the pictures started coming in. I immediately got defensive and told Emily I didn't ask for them and that Sarah and I weren't talking like that. I even offered Emily my phone so she could see for herself. Emily looked at the pictures and then asked for Sarah's number so she could text her own news back to show Sarah how it's done. I called Sarah and asked her what the hell she was doing. I told her that Emily was sitting next to me and saw the messages and was pissed. Sarah tried to claim she meant to send them to someone else. Emily pointed out that my name was on one end of the alphabet while her boyfriend's was on the other. Then she asked Sarah who the new guy was since the pictures were supposedly meant for someone else. Sarah hung up. I really don't know what game Sarah is playing. This is all just crazy to me. Let me clear up a few things because I've seen some misunderstandings in the comments. First, Emily did not send nudes back to Sarah. That was just her verbal response, a joke about how Sarah's attempt was lackluster. The pictures Sarah sent were of her with her shirt off, making duck faces at a mirror with her phone in hand. Emily simply made a joke about Sarah's lack of imagination. Second, I do not live in my old apartment anymore, the one I shared with Sarah. I moved in with Emily because despite me taking the keys back from Sarah, she took my son's keys and used those to keep breaking in. Sarah does not have access to my new place and my kids don't even have keys for this reason. I'm currently fighting for custody of my kids. It's not easy, especially with me not being the biological father of my daughter, but I'm fighting based on the birth certificate listing me as the father, which gives me parental rights to her. Sarah was prescribed meds, but I'm seriously doubting if she's taking them. I check my kids for bruises and make sure they aren't being abused. However, Sarah made the mistake of getting physical with her boyfriend and he punched a hole in the wall and warned her that if she raises a fist at him again, he's fighting back. One commenter mentioned that Sarah sounds dangerous and they suggested I talk to my attorney about getting a restraining order. I'm seriously considering it, especially after everything that has happened. I'm documenting all of her erratic behavior to use in court. Update 1. Not the father. This isn't my first post here, but I wanted to vent about something that has me baffled. So through a paternity test, I found out that my daughter is not my biological child, but the child of my ex-friend, who is now living with Sarah. This past weekend was my daughter's official 6th birthday. It wasn't my weekend to have the kids, so I was shocked when Sarah asked if I wanted to take them for my daughter's birthday. Of course, I said yes. I was even granted an extra 2 days with them. I figured Sarah and her boyfriend had plans and were pawning the kids off on me so they could do whatever. But the thing that strikes me as odd is that this was the first time he could celebrate his daughter's birthday as her biological father, and instead of doing something special as her dad, she was given to me and Emily. Does anyone else think this is a bit messed up? A commenter, Curator General, noted that Sarah's boyfriend is a disgusting degenerate who had a child with another man's partner. They warned me not to make the mistake of expecting him to start acting like a responsible adult after he's already gotten away with acting like scum for so long. Another commenter, Thickenuk, expressed concern for the poor girl, who will be subjected to lousy parenting by most of the adults in her life. They suggested documenting this disinterest if I decide to revisit custody. Update 2. Karma hits Sarah. I have to shake my head at this latest development. Saturday night, I receive an angry text from Sarah saying she hopes I'm freaking happy that I won. I know I shouldn't have engaged in the conversation, but I asked what her problem was. She responded with a rant that made no sense and then proceeded to tell me to go ahead and gloat times 10 because something happened to her. She then accused me of being in on it. I asked what I was supposedly in on, but instead of a direct answer, she went off about how all men are pigs and can't be trusted. From this, I gathered two things. She was drunk and the guy she left me for cheated on her. I didn't say anything because any response would have led to a fight, and I chose not to get into it. I just read the text and thought she got exactly what was coming to her. She left me for a married guy who had cheated on his wife multiple times, and when I brought this up as she was leaving me, she told me, I know what I'm getting into. I guess she thought she would be the one to change him. When Sarah ran out of insults to fling at me, she shifted her attack to Emily, telling me Emily was ugly as heck and that I could have had any girl but chose someone ugly to replace her with. Emily is stunning, both inside and out. Sarah is clearly extremely jealous of her, and as I've mentioned in previous posts, she's even tried to stalk Emily and change her appearance to look like her. Sarah's attacks didn't stop there. She told me that I don't love Emily, and that it's impossible for me to fall in love with the first woman I slept with after losing her. Sarah and I had been apart for a year when I met Emily, and it took time for me to feel comfortable trusting someone again. That trust was earned and not given easily. Sarah then claimed that I only love Emily because I lost my apartment and I'm kissing her butt for a place to live. She said, it's only love when you're homeless. For context, I had my own apartment across the street from Sarah because she decided to stay in the complex to flaunt her relationship with my former friend in my face every waking minute. When my lease was up, I decided to move in with Emily and relocate my job to her area. I know Sarah was trying to provoke a fight, but I just wasn't giving it to her. When I thought Sarah's attacks couldn't get any more stupid and childish, she told me she was sorry she wasn't enough for me. I wanted so badly to call her and scream that it was me who wasn't good enough for her. Did she forget that she left me? She left me for a married guy who had cheated repeatedly on his wife. Real winner there. She then went on to say that both Emily and I know that Sarah was the one I really wanted to be with, and that Emily couldn't compete or hold a candle to her. At that point, I had enough and asked her to contact me when she was better and sober. Then I turned my phone off. Hours later, when Emily came home, she asked me what was wrong. I warned her that she was going to get mad and handed her my phone, telling her to read the messages for herself. She read them, laughed her head off, and handed the phone back to me, saying, looks like he cheated. I agreed and tried to reassure her, thinking Sarah's ugly comments might make her question me. But they didn't even faze her. Emily told me that Sarah's narcissistic ways really come out full-blown when she's drunk and guessed that Sarah was upset that she couldn't come to me for a revenge fling to get back at her boyfriend. I haven't heard anything else from Sarah. My guess is that, as usual, the next day she looked back at those texts and felt stupid. I'm also betting she's back with him because she can't stand being alone. Update 3. Halloween chaos and custody battles. As of my last update, Sarah got cheated on by the guy she left me for. Just as I predicted, they got back together 3 days later. I wasn't surprised. She has no one else to fall back on, and now she's stuck with him. Since then, I hadn't heard much from her outside of signing a few divorce documents and communicating about the kids. I was thankful for the quiet, but I knew it wouldn't last. It never does with her. This Halloween, my band was asked to perform at an event that one of my friends sets up every year. It's been a tradition for a few years now. Sarah used to attend with me, but she didn't last year because that's when I found out she was sleeping with my best friend and that my now 6-year-old daughter was actually his. Naturally, she wasn't invited this year. But guess what? She showed up anyway, with her boyfriend and my kids in tow. I was furious. Kids are not allowed at these parties, are strictly for adults, and she knows this. I strongly believe she showed up with the kids to get me thrown out. Security kept telling her she couldn't come in, and she stood there arguing, saying the kids wanted to see their father play. I had security telling me I needed to get them out of there, and Sarah screaming at me that I was putting a party over my kids. My friend, who was hosting the party, came down and told her she could stay and watch me do 2 songs, but then she would have to leave. If she refused, he said he would call the police. I told my friend not to cater to her, but he insisted he was only doing it for my kids. The night was a disaster. While I was on stage, I wasn't aware of everything happening around the party. Between sets, I found out Sarah had tried clashing with Emily, which didn't end well for her. Emily put her in her place and called her out on using our kids to play games. This was witnessed by many people, and when I walked off stage, several people told me where they were. When I got to them, whatever argument had happened was over, but Sarah was staring daggers at Emily from across the room. My daughter ended up humiliating Sarah, by loudly telling everyone that she has two daddies, me and her mommy's boyfriend, who was actually her real daddy. Sarah was mortified, saying, "Thanks for making me sound like trash," and left shortly after. But my son refused to go with her and insisted on staying with me. Sarah's boyfriend found Emily and asked if we could keep my son for the night, and Emily agreed. She worked it out with my friend to keep my son with her for the rest of the party, and we took him home the following night. My mirrors were shot the entire night. I must have apologized to my friend Emily and my son 1,000 times for putting them in the middle of this mess. I messed up every song because I kept scanning the crowd, worrying a physical fight might break out. When I took my son home the next night, Sarah made it a point not to be there. Her boyfriend apologized to me for everything that happened and tried to talk to me about her behavior. I told him I wasn't interested in getting into it with him and left. Later that night, I got a phone call from my son telling me they were fighting badly over me. Apparently, her boyfriend had enough of Sarah's antics and accused her of not being over me. He asked her if what bothers her most is that I moved on and she can't crawl back to me, or if it's that she knows if she hadn't left me when she did, I would have eventually left her for Emily. According to my son, that's what started their argument. I could hear them screaming in the background and ask him if he needed me to come get him, but he said no. I stayed on the phone with him until things calmed down. So that's where I am right now, still going through the divorce, still moving forward, and still fighting to get my kids out of that toxic environment. I'm not looking back at what I lost anymore. I just want to make sure my kids are safe and that they know they have a stable home with me.